Shakaama versus liberals. Thank you for watching the Shakaama live show with your host, Shakaama. So on my Twitter feed, I just got through arguing for 4 hours. It was me versus the liberals. On one side is me and, well, just me. All my conservative followers completely stayed out of the argument the entire time. They only retweeted little golden nuggets that I said during the argument, just to serve as, I don't know, silent partners, if you would. On the other side was 15, then 20, then 40 liberals, all coming after me. And so I made sure to respond to the person with the most names on their tweet so that everybody could see my responses and not get my responses secondhand, which they were trying to do with their retweets of what I was saying. So what was the topic of discussion? Raising the minimum wage. So you know that the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, came out with a report doing projections of what would happen if the minimum wage were raised to $10, right? So currently it's $7.75 for the federal minimum wage. Your states may vary. Well, the CBO report said that the potential losses could be 500,000 up to 1 million jobs lost from implementing the wage hike. Well, to placate anything that the White House might say, they said, well, it could have the effect of boosting the economy by $64 million in the additional money earned by those people who are still employed after minimum wage. And of course, they all took this to mean that if Obama raised the minimum wage to $10.10, that would mean that $64 million would go to all of the markets. Well, here's the thing. What I was trying to convey to them, and of course they kept calling me a Republican, I kept saying, I'm not a Republican. God help you if you ever elected me president, because you would clearly see that I'm not a Republican in any shape, form, nor fashion. I am a libertarian. I'm not an anarchist, I am a libertarian. I believe that there should be some laws and that you should have a police force to protect citizens against those who would do them harm, not to babysit them, not to arrest them for stuff to keep the city running, none of that stuff. I wouldn't have any of that stuff. I think that's all completely unconstitutional and all completely against any freedoms and rights that citizens have. But my real thing was trying to convey that you, as a liberal, don't see the full picture, and that this whole touchy-feely, but if you raise the minimum wage, think of the people that you're going to be helping. If you raise the minimum wage across the board in the entire nation to $10.10, the immediate impact would be that businesses would go out of business. Number one, let's not even look at unemployment. Let's look at businesses. Employers would go out of business across the United States. Yes, there are, people always think of Wall Street and the airlines and Walmart and Kmart and McDonald's, these huge mega corporations. They keep forgetting that there are still people who are small businesses who employ 1 or 2 people at minimum wage or slightly better. If they had to pay $10.10, they would go out of business, period. And no, you can't just raise your prices. Some people are stuck at the prices that they are, period. And if they had to pay more for their prices, let's say I order stuff in my business, those prices would be raised all the way up the food chain, right? So the manufacturer raises his prices, the shipment raises its prices, The intermediary raises his prices, and by the time it gets to me, now it is more than my area can afford. And let's take a look at this one. The big company in my market lowers its price to pre-minimum wage hike prices. So it prices me and all the rest of the tiny people out of the market completely, and you end up with less people being hired than the projection of the CBO. It doesn't even make sense to raise the minimum wage. The black unemployment rate is at 30%. In some cities, the black unemployment rate of young black men, that's from teenager to young adults, is at a staggering 50%. In some cities, it's at 50%. Literally, you would probably not even know somebody who has a job in that age group. I was trying to put together a bill here in Nevada that said to allow black people to negotiate a less than minimum wage salary. In Nevada, the minimum wage is at $8.75, so it's already $1 more. What does it actually do? That means it prices out all the people who would be hired at $7.75 here in Nevada. Why is this important in Nevada? Nevada has one of the highest unemployment rates in the nation, and they have a higher than minimum wage. The state minimum wage is $1 more than the federal minimum wage. Why do we have one of the highest unemployment rates in the nation? It's probably that dollar. And people don't understand that. It's basic economics. Go look it up. It's basic economics. If I can only get out of you $5 worth of profit every hour, I'm not going to pay you $7.75, and even less than $8.75. If I can squeeze out of you $8, I'm still not going to pay you $8.75. But I might be able to pay you $7.75. I don't know if that would even be feasible, because there's much more to it than that. I would literally have to get $15 out of you, because what you don't see on the other side of the equation, on the employer side, is I have to pay the employer side of the labor taxes, labor costs to the federal government. And people don't understand that. They don't understand how a business even runs. And these liberals, they were just coming at me left and right, and they're saying, this is the greatest retail time in history in the past 10 years. This was the greatest Christmas, and all of my indicators, all of my financial, all of the stuff that investors actually look at says the exact opposite. Why do you think the stock market is crashing? Because the economy is so great? Because the economy is doing so good? Because retail sales are coming in at a staggering profit? No. Look at Wall Street. Wall Street still gives you some indicators. Just by the Dow Jones Industrial Average being down, it should tell you things are not going right. Obama might say everything's going fantastic, but if Wall Street is crashing, not just going slightly down, crashing by 300 points, it should tell you something. And of course, and it said, think of all of the stuff that the people could buy, and they should be paid a living wage. That is not the purview of government. If you want that type of government, if you want that type of system, it's called communism. Go over to China and live there, or Cuba, live there, or the Middle East. The Middle East has that certain. We went over the Middle East, and they said, show me a place that doesn't have a minimum wage. I said, the Middle East doesn't have a minimum wage. They get a salary, but it's not a minimum wage. They get a salary because the country makes oil, and the oil is everywhere, and literally they can go start drilling in your backyard and you couldn't do anything about it, but they will hand you a paycheck. You haven't done anything, but you get a paycheck. There is no minimum wage, but you get a paycheck anyway, simply because the country is rich. And they say, well, that doesn't count. That's not the same type. You asked me for a place that doesn't have a minimum wage, and I gave you a place that didn't have minimum wage. If they want that sort of system, they should go to a socialist or a communist system. And they said, well, we already tried free market. We have never tried free market in this country. It has never existed. The founding fathers signed the Declaration of Independence, signed the Constitution, signed the Bill of Rights, put it into law, and immediately businesses went into overdrive to get in on the federal government. Since day one, it never was ever a free market in the United States. It was very close, and that's why they hated the West. Way out west, when we didn't have a train or anything, any sort of way to get to the West, when we actually had all the way up to California, they hated the West because the West was called the Wild West. You could do whatever you want to. You could plop down on some land, call it your own, farm it, sell your stuff, and nobody would say anything. That was the Wild West. Even from day one, you couldn't do that in New York, Virginia, Massachusetts, Maryland, none of those places. You couldn't do that. There was regulation from the very beginning. They immediately started in on this whole corporatist sort of takeover of the federal government and to try and grow the federal government as large as possible. And now, of course, it is bloated and out of control, and Obama is making it even more out of control. They have literally lost their mind. And I asked on Twitter, I said, Democrats, whose side are you on? It's not possible that you could be on the side of Americans. It's not possible that you could even be on your own side. It seems like it's unintelligent of you to be cheering on your own destruction. It makes no sense. Anyway, I had to go. A lot of them blocked me, ignored me, permanently banned me from their little tweet feeds. I didn't ban or block anybody. I like the discourse. That's fine. You don't have to agree with me. But that's not my problem if you don't understand. The first thing I had to convey to them is please understand basic investing, basic economics, basic finance. Understand that this system that you're so for is not what you think it is. Welfare goes through Chase Bank. We think that welfare is this number here and it's this little tiny number. On the back side of it, servicing fees are gathered by Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs. All of those financial companies are sucking on the tit of the federal government, which is your tax dollars. So this whole idea of minimum wage, first of all, only 1% of the entire labor force is on minimum wage. And that 1% changes every 6 months. So every 6 months, a whole new slew of people comes around. And one of the guys admitted, oh, I know that they fire people every 6 months because after 6 months, you're entitled for a raise. So instead of handing out raises, they fire you and they go and find somebody else to work the minimum wage. And luckily people have children and not everybody's aborted in this godforsaken country. And you have some more teenagers who are going to apply and get a job at minimum wage. The employer might pay minimum wage forever, but the employee doesn't stay at minimum wage forever because he's entitled to more. He has experience now. He's somewhat skilled at whatever market that he's just got into. Then they threw at me, oh, well, my grandmother works for minimum wage part-time. She needs a raise. Well, that's not what minimum wage was. She's not even a part of that group. She was never intended to be a part of that group. And people who scream about the people raising families on minimum wage, they're not supposed to be a part of that group, period. So really, it falls on deaf ears, not just with me, but especially with Congress. That falls on deaf ears completely. They're not supposed to be in that position. Yes, the economy fell and all that sort of stuff, all these horrible things happened, but they do not consider somebody with a wife and children as being on minimum wage. It just doesn't happen because somebody with a wife and children has been working for at least 2 years. They should not be on minimum wage. And then they said, oh, but there are people who are working 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. That's the economy now. That's the economy. And you're not going to get away from that. Now, are they on a minimum wage job? Two or three jobs? It's impossible. They might have 2 and 3 jobs, but they're not working minimum wage. So the entire conversation doesn't even apply to them. More than likely, they've already been working for 15 years and have some skills. They have some sort of skills that they can parlay into a salary that is way more than minimum wage. Be it part-time or not, they're still going to be making more than minimum wage. If they're 30 years old, they're not going to be working minimum wage. And if they are, shame on them. They should go and look for a job that, of course, they are qualified for, right? That is going to pay more than minimum wage. That's on them. That's not for the American taxpayer to subsidize JP Morgan to pay this person at minimum wage or whatever sort of communistic sort of social program that they've cooked up to get Democrat votes. Anyway, my Twitter link is on my main page of my YouTube channel. Always go and check that out. And I wore my hat to show that I'm a peaceful, peace-loving guy. If I were president as a libertarian, I'd be gutting all of that. I'd probably be dead the next day though, because I'd be gutting out IRS, JP, all of those people. I would cut off the feeding trough so quickly it would be over within seconds. And I'd probably be dead within seconds. But you know what? The American population wouldn't be paying 40-50%. And here's another thing that they don't understand. Although they might be at the 15th percentile when they're paying their taxes and they've done all this sort of stuff, they're actually paying the federal government 40 whopping or 50% of their income throughout the year. They just don't understand it. They don't calculate that. They don't calculate things like inflation and stuff like that. It is amazing to me, and I ask, what are the Democrats thinking? Whose side are they on? They're not on America's side. Thank you for watching the Shakaama Live Show.